Hello, everyone. Let's see. Can you see me? Oh, yeah. Now you can see me. Good afternoon, Prof. How are you?
Good to see you, and good to see everybody else.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the early birds that is here. Let's just give it a second. Unless early birds, if you have something you would like to ask, like while we are waiting for some other people to join, you are welcome to use the time. To ask a question or make a comment or whatever. So I'm just going to switch off my camera and mic, but if Kayleen and Amy or Ame, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, if you have something to say, just speak up, then we'll respond. If not, I'll see you again in like, I don't know, 3-4 minutes to start the class. All right. Let's start with the introduction, and then for those who still joining, they won't miss out on the flesh of the session. Firstly, welcome to this touch base. It's always good to meet up with you on a Monday and to get some interaction. Normally you guys are so quiet, but I know at least that you are there, that you are listening, and I can see from my emails that you are, or at least some of you are enjoying the sessions, and it's grounds for further thinking or for further questions that then come via email. Just to follow up on last week when we talked about the assignment 2 feedback, I realized that whoever said it in this session was indeed correct. There was some kind of problem with the release of the marks that I didn't realize. So it was true that by last Monday, not I thought probably half of you would have gotten results, but that was not close to the truth. Only here and there would have been somebody with results, because for all of the external markers, they seem to have lost the permission to release results by themselves. So I had to release the results, but the situation is that most of you should have had your results by now. I'm attending still to some of the queries and questions I've received on email last week. But for the most part, if you have handed in an assignment and you have not received results and you've not sent me an email yet, because I have not attended to those emails, I'm collecting them until there's like the majority of inquiries are together, and then I attend to them all together. But so if you've sent an email, you are fine. I'll read it. If you have not received results without a specific reason, please drop me a mail, because by now, if everything went well with your assignment, you handed in on time, nothing happened outside of the system and so on, you should have your results and feedback. Okay, and that at least is good news. Now, as we said to each other last week and the week before, every week for 3 weeks, this week, next week, and then the week second session in November, we'll be talking through some examples of what could be in an exam portfolio answer. And the one we are starting with today, I'll share my screen for you to follow. This document is on my UNISA, and I also made it available in the chat. So if for some reason you struggle to see on the screen, open that document on your own device so that you can follow along. Last week we went through these first 2 columns. Now the highlight doesn't work like that. To give you an idea of what it is that's going to come. Today we are dealing with this first assignment. And if we have time, I also want to show you an example of a student of the past. He is already a master's degree student now, so this is some years ago, but to show you a real example of an exam portfolio that did very well. Just as maybe just a way of making you aware of what is the volume of work, how frequent the in-text references are, and so on, when we regard a piece of work as pretty good. So if we have time, I'll get to this example and talk you through some things there. But okay, today we're talking about this donor funding topic in an NPO or NGO context within the field of public relations. This is just the summative words for this example. So in your introduction, you could start your introduction by referring to the module aims or purposes or outcomes as in the 101. And you could refer to the task of assignment 3 or the learning objectives of assignment 3 as part of your introductory paragraph. Then, for a research project like or a research report or a proposal like the one you're writing now, it's the best idea is to get your reader into the picture as soon as possible. So stating what your topic is in the introduction already is a very easy way of doing that. Tell your reader from the start what it is that you are proposing in this in the rest of the document. So that is a short summary of my, remember I said that this NPO, this urban crop community, is a fictional NPO, but the short topic of this project is the use of social media in fundraising efforts by the NPO urban crop community. Then your reader already knows what's the organization, what's the topic, and kind of you already allude to what the research problem could be as well. And then you can do, as many of you like to do this in introductions, that's fine, as long as that's not the only thing you do in your intro. You can indicate the main sections in the proposal, in the sections that follow. The research will be contextualized, the research problem explicated, the literature review summarized, and so on. Give an overview of what is to come. Then in the first the content section, the disciplinary contextualization. You know, if I had to write this portfolio, I would have created these 3 subheadings or subsections, a 2.1, 2.2, and a 2.3, to make it nice and clear. And then in the first section, you give a short overview of organizational communication. That is our discipline, right? So starting with that, starting with what is organizational communication, and because we are going towards the disciplinary contextualization, so this is moving you forward to discussing public relations as your focus field or your field of specialization. So it's the easiest thing to do is to describe organizational communication and then already mention that the discipline, you know, has a number of fields of specializations or sub areas or focus areas that includes public relations before you start with the public relations part of the discussion. Then your field of your field of specialization subsection. You identify public relations as a field in organizational communications. You define it. Now, the most well-known and well-used definition, or highly regarded definition, is that of PRISA. That is the South African Public Relations Institute. I'm not sure, is that Iron Institute? Professor Du Plessis, maybe you will know. But their definition is usually the one, or it's a safe one. You know, it's one that is widely accepted. So define the field, briefly expand on the field by covering some of the practices, maybe give a little bit of historical development background, maybe even some subfields if there are. And then you must establish that fundraising and donor relationships are part of public relations, because these are the terms you are using in your study. So linking them to your chosen field is important. Otherwise, you discuss a field, public relations, you discuss the field just from your textbook. If you do that, you leave your reader wondering, yeah, but what does this have to do with your study? What about the study is public relations? So fundraising and donor relationships, you could see them as subfields of public relations, because public relations is about the management of strategic relationships of an organization. So if you're a nonprofit organization, donor relations is donors or funders. They are probably your most important strategic stakeholder group, and managing relationships with donors towards the intention of raising funds for your organization survival. That is definitely a public relations exercise. So write a paragraph or so that brings those two together. Your field and your study topic. Then the last subsection here is where you have to place your topic within this context. Now, you already started doing that here in this in the previous section by linking fundraising and donor relations to public relations, but now you can expand on that a little bit more. For instance, you can say how fundraising and donor communication can be seen as part of public relations as a field. And you can, because also this is as a social media focus, right? Do you remember from the introduction there, the use of social media in fundraising efforts? All right, so you can also discuss how social media, especially maybe Facebook and Instagram or whatever the more relevant ones are for your chosen organization, can be seen as emerging channels or platforms of communication between organizations and their stakeholders. So that we can see that your topic firmly sits within our discipline. It is in fact a communication study, and it is in fact a public relations study. Then the next thing up is the organizational contextualization, again with some subheadings. The first one is the bigger organizational environment. So if your study was about this urban crop community organization, you can stipulate that they are an NPO that works with sustainable vegetable growing projects. The sector they operate in is the social sector or the civil society sector, or even the development sector. Different people call this by different names. And the industry is the agricultural industry, because they're working in kind of farming, vegetable gardening. So they will be in the agricultural, realm of economic activity, if you want to put it like that. Then further organizational context could include a discussion on nonprofits as organizations, the organization of community initiatives, issues of food security, and so on, if you want to describe this broader organizational environment. Then the overview of the organization itself. You must cover the basics about the organization, like the location of the head office, the main projects or divisions of the organization, what they're busy with, and a bit of history maybe. You will, for real organizations, Urban Crop is now not real, but for real ones, you'll probably find this type of information on their website, the About Us type of information. And since the topic is on public relations, you must also remember that this overview of the organization should be angled towards details that is important for a study that is about public relations and fundraising. So it's not necessary for you to discuss, or it's irrelevant for you to discuss, like the specific of the staff contingent. Maybe Urban Crop Community employs 25 people. 5 people are gardeners, 4 act in administrative positions. There is 1 manager, there is 2 drivers, because that is not really what your study is about. So why spend an entire paragraph giving organizational details that are not pertinent to your work? So this overview of the organization must be angled towards what your study is about. It's no problem to mention Urban Crop Community is a non-profit organization in Johannesburg. They employ 25 people, but that's it. Then you can stop saying these general things. Then you can say their main stakeholder groups are identified on their website or in their annual report, or whichever organizational sources you are going to use. Are their community, their staff members, their donors, and their partner organizations that also work in the agricultural sector, or their partners, farming partners, or whatever. Those are their major stakeholders. Then you can focus on where they get their money from. Most NGOs will have a report, the bigger ones, of course, that run like good websites. There will be some kind of an annual report or a report back, like in a governance sense. Non-profits must report on where their money comes from. So detailing that is interesting, because you can then establish that donor funding is part of the life of this organization. So that's what I mean. You give some background on the organization, but remember to focus on those details that are actually linked to your study, and not random details about maybe what kind of vegetables they plant, or, like I said earlier, how many staff and what everyone does. That is not really the relevant for your study. Okay, next up is you have to put your topic in the context of this specific organization. So for Urban Crop Community as a non-profit organization, fundraising is a crucial part of their public relations efforts, and research on the topic is relevant and important to sustainability and growth for this organization, and also for the bigger industry. So that type of link, you can make a statement like the one in this example. You can very easily use the same idea as this example, but to make your own type of statement, just to be clear about how your study is actually relevant to this organization as well. Then the next big section is your research problem. The problem statement you are required to include. Now, what I have here, you've got some good idea of what is needed for a research problem because you formulated a research problem for assignment 2. It's not necessary to write for this exam portfolio to write a huge background to them. To the problem, but the problem statement must be more than just a topic. Just as the answer to question 1.1 and the question to 2.1 in assignment 2 was different from one another, if you remember the briefs we gave on assignment 2. This has to give a bit, it has to go further. Now I choose this formulation of a purpose statement that kind of summarizes all the most important parts of the study as the problem statement. So for this example, it reads, a mixed method cross-sectional description of the use of social media by NPOs to increase donor funding and maintain donor relationships. The case of urban crop community. So can you see it's not just this, like the first, the topic we gave there in the introduction is just the use of social media in fundraising efforts. And what you get then here in the problem statement is quite a bit more comprehensive. Then you are also required to formulate sub-problems or research questions. Now, you haven't done that in assignment 2. So you'll probably have to do some reading. Let me see, have I uploaded any of that? I just want to make sure. Sorry, now you are. Okay, let's move it out of the way. I just want to see whether I uploaded, or maybe one of you can tell me. There's some examples of research problems and then their research questions, specific research questions that I shared with the group of last year. I'm not sure whether I already uploaded that. If not, I will, let me just see. Support material. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, no, you only have this examples document at the moment. I just want to show you the one from last year just to give you an idea of what that will look like, but I'll upload that this afternoon. No, let's hope. Okay, there you go. That is last year's My UNISA, and it will look something like this. Maybe this is the best one to show you now as an example. See, an example that looks like this. That is the topic, and then the problem statement, the qualitative cross-sectional relationship, that same style as the one I read now in this urban crop, and then some research questions that can maybe work for that problem. And then here's another topic with some research questions and a research problem statement. There's another one. So these are just examples. I will upload it today because it's always easier if you can see how somebody else did research questions to create your own for your own project. You cannot steal these, of course, you can't plagiarize them, but it helps to kind of see those patterns, or how is the formulation of research questions. I'll upload this today to assist you with that. Now let's just get back to this example. But because this urban crop community study, this example is for a mixed method study, means it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. I formulated hypotheses as well as research questions. Now, you can have a quantitative component without formulating an hypothesis, but if you are intending to measure a correlation or a relationship between two different variables, the standard way is to formulate hypotheses for it, but it's also possible to answer those type two. Is there a relationship between the introduction of social media and donor income, or is there, so you could always, the correlation between the two, you could formulate it in a research question as well for the purposes of this exam portfolio. But this, I just wanted to show you what this could look like. So the null hypothesis is there's no relationship between the introduction of social media and donor income. And then the hypothesis is there is a positive relationship between the introduction of social media and donor income. So that is the quantitative part of this study. And then the research questions kind of represent the questions that will be answered by the qualitative work. How did urban crop community approach the introduction of social media to their PR activities? And the second RQ, how do individual donors perceive the use of social media as introduced by urban crop community? What is important about research questions and hypotheses, they must kind of be smaller chunks of your main research problem. So your main research problem is you need a description of the use of social media by NPOs to increase donor funding and maintain donor relationships. So you are interested in the conceptualization of this example, for instance. I was interested in, is it actually true? Does the introduction of social media, did it increase the donor funds or not? So can we already see, based on the numbers, whether social media made a difference in donor funding? And then we are also interested in whether it maintains donor relationships, and we are also interested in the use of social media. And that is where the RQs come in. How did urban crop community approach social media into their PR? So that is basically what are they doing? How are they doing social media? And the second question is about how donors think and feel about it. So if you can know what how the donors perceive the introduction of social media, if you can know what urban crop community actually does in terms of social media, and if you can test whether it actually made a difference in the funds that came into the organization, then you already know enough to be able to address your main problem, that is describing the use of social media to increase donor funding and maintain relationships. So can you see how it's like a breakdown of your main issue into smaller chunks? And if you can see it as a sum, like the sum of the answers to your specific research questions will end up enabling you to answer your main research question or solve or address your main research issue. All right, then the research objectives must be discussed in this section 4. As you can see already here in the problem formulation, the main objective of this study is description. So you have to expand by using literature on what a descriptive objective is and why descriptive objective is suitable for your study. Then the paradigmatic position. You guys know a lot about the research paradigms by now, because all of assignment 1 and again in assignment 2 you needed to use that information to complete the assignments. But for this study in an urban crop community, I think pragmatism is the best, and you have to outline the position and motivate the reason for taking this position. And then you have to declare the ontological, epistemological, and methodological assumptions associated with pragmatism that are relevant and applied to the context of your specific study. Fundraising in this example is a very real and important function in nonprofits, and making improvements and finding solutions in this area is necessary for their survival and sustainability. Through a mixed method approach, a holistic understanding of the research issue can be gained, while the specific research methods, quantitative document or content analysis, and qualitative in-depth interviews are deemed suitable. Let me just get to the next page. For a practical investigation of this issue. Impressions of donor and nonprofit staff is central to understanding the use of social media and to establish whether or not social media is related to higher donor income is mainly used to supplement this understanding. That little bit of justification is to link your paradigmatic position to your research design and your approach and your methods. Now, you did this for assignment 2, some of you more successfully than not, but you will use that, what you've learned from those motivations you had to write in assignment 2 to write this. And this is an example of what you could have written for motivating pragmatism. It is a very real and practical issue, and that's why a practical approach or an approach that is intended to address a real life problem, pragmatism, that is a good position to take it from. And the mixed method approach, and as I've read, you motivate the mixed method approach and the specific qualitative quantitative combo shortly to link your paradigmatic position to your design and your approach and your methods that come in the sections to follow. All right, then your methodology, your research approach. We already said this a number of times. It's a mixed method study in this case. So it's both qualitative and quantitative methods. Remember that in this example, it is not triangulation, even if it is mixed methods, because the different methods are used to address different parts of the research problem. They are not both measuring the same questions or answering the same questions for you to triangulate and see whether there's correspondence between the two data sets. You are using the quantitative data set to see whether donor funding can be, is correlated to the social media practices, and you are using qualitative to answer the questions on perception of the donors and the actual how the organization approached social media or how they do social media PR. So they are not, it's not triangulation, but it's a mixed method approach. Your research design is a case study. In this case, most of yours will probably be a case study if you choose a specific organization. That I find is it's not always necessary to call a study that focuses on one organization a case study, but it is usually kind of an easy way to describe your study if you do focus on one organization. Otherwise, you have to address why you why you sampled this one organization out of a number of others in the same industry or in the same province or in the same town. But if it's a case study, you can say this organization was chosen. It can be chosen for a number of reasons. It doesn't have to be that they are like the best one to do this study in. It could be feasible. It could be that they have good information available, that you obtain permission, that you have access in some kind of special way. Or because the activities of this nonprofit interest you. There could be various reasons. It doesn't have to be a sampling process if you choose a case study. So that is why I chose it here for this example. It's one organization that is the case chosen, so it's a case study design. Then the two specific methods. Method 1, remember I said it's not a good idea to make that heading method 1. You make the heading quantitative document analysis or quantitative content analysis or whatever the method is. This quantitative analysis, it includes a correlation calculation, that is a statistical calculation to see whether there's a correlation between social media use and donor income, between the financial records, like the donor income per month, and the reported inception date of social media use. The population is then the financial records for the years spanning 2 years before and all the years since the initiation of social media as a communication channel. So let's dream it up that they've started using social media in, seriously in 2015. So you are looking at financial records for the 2 years before 2015 and then for the 8 years after 2015 to summarize the donor income per month so that you can have a before and an after picture. If you have decided on that as your population, you are not drawing a further sample. So we can call this a census of all the relevant financial records. And it doesn't mean you have to include every single financial report this company has ever produced. For your reasons, you've demarcated the population to only span 2 years before and 8 years after social media started being used. So if you demarcate it in the population part, then you can say it's a census because no further sample will be drawn. I guess you can also describe this as you could have made the population the financial records of all the time, of all the years since the organization was registered, and then draw a purposive sample of the financial records 2 years before and 8 years after, or 2 years before and 2 years after. That could have been described like that. It would come down to the same thing. But in this example, I wanted to show you that you could describe it like this. And then the data collection process here is you will have to describe the process of getting access, the format of the documentation, and the specific details included for your analysis. We know we're looking for donor income per year, but there could be like multiple streams of donor income. Maybe there's state funding, maybe there's a big corporate funding, maybe the NPO sells vegetables and then there's an income that is not donor income. So in that data collection process, you will discuss the finer nuances of which parts of the financial record you're actually going to look at. And then the quantitative content analysis and correlation calculations are described under data analysis. If you are doing quantitative work, you usually specify the statistical program you used. SPSS is the one here in this example. SPSS is used for the statistical analysis. You don't have to understand exactly how the correlation calculation on SPSS will be done. But for this task, you have to have some kind of idea about what is correlation analysis and what SPSS look like. And maybe the best idea for you is to go and read how other people summarize their statistical work. Maybe in master's dissertations, like where they describe their methodology, you'll get a sense of how people write about this, or in articles that only have a very short paragraph or two available to describe their methodology. So the idea here is to give you an idea of how we write about this. You don't need to study up SPSS and specific statistical calculations for this. It's a research proposal, but you must just show that you have some kind of idea what this calculation is about. And then method 2 is partially structured interviews. Qualitative partially structured interviews with both staff members and individual donors, because remember, for the research questions, let's just scroll back to them. Research question 1 is, how did urban crop community approach social media in their PR, introduce social media in their PR activities? So you got to ask the people of urban crop community how they do social media. So that's what you do in this one part of the interviewing. And then you have to get to understand the individual donor's perception, and that's why you are interviewing them as well. Let's go back to this method. For this example, the method is partially structured interviews, but because you have to include both the staff members and the donor contingent, you will have 2 population groups, because you are not going to ask the same questions to both of them. It will help you nothing if you ask a donor, maybe it's the tire business on the corner that is giving this vegetable non-profit some money. What will that tire guy know about when they started social media? What platforms do they use? he might not know. So the questions you will ask the donors will be quite different from what you ask of the staff, and the other way around. So it's not one population from which you sample, it's two populations and two samples and two interview guides with different questions, because you want different information from each group, right? So the staff population, let's say it's all the staff members involved in social media communication. So let's say there are 6 of them. Maybe it's the manager, like the second in charge, and maybe there's an admin person, and maybe a communications person. I don't know where the other 6, the other 2 will come from, but everybody who does something, has something to do with the social media posts and process, is included in this population. The donor population is all the donors of Urban Crop Community. Let's say the population size is 15. They have 15 current donors. Then the staff sample. In the sampling, you draw a purpose of sample in order to ensure the inclusion of the most relevant staff members. So of that 6, it would be less ideal if you get 2 interns and 2 administrative staff members, where it would be much more ideal if you can get the manager, the deputy, the second in charge, like, I don't know, staff manager, deputy manager, I don't know what you would call such a person, the communications person, and then maybe 1 or 2 admin or intern type people. So to ensure that you get the ideal informants that can answer your questions best, you draw a purpose of sample. In the donor population, you also draw a purpose of sample to include the biggest donor as well as a range of smaller donors, because they're like, this is just, it doesn't have to be like that, but let's imagine that Urban Crop Community has one donor where most of their money comes from. So what that donor thinks is a lot more informative to the organization. Their perceptions are a lot more important than maybe one lady that like drops off cuttings from her own garden every now and again and gives 50 Rand in an envelope on the way out. She's a donor, right? But she's a very small donor, and her perceptions not that crucial if it's about ensuring donor income. So in this example, the purpose of sample is then to include that one big donor and then a range of smaller donors. Maybe there's a variety, and you can select specifically to include one of each type of donor or so on. And I think that is it for this. Oh no, there's data collection still here. All interviews will be conducted face-to-face in locations most comfortable for individual participants. 2 interview schedules will be designed, because remember, you have to ask different questions, so you'll have to compile these 2 different interview schedules or interview guides. 1 for donors to ascertain their perception of social media used by of Urban Crop Community, and 1 for staff to ascertain how the introduction of social media was approached. And then you must discuss the data analysis shortly. In the example here, I wrote in vivo assisted analysis. I don't use in vivo myself. I use Atlas TI, but in your little summary, you don't have to know the software program in depth. But by mentioning a software program that is actually used for qualitative analysis, you can show that you know what you're going to do. This is a research proposal. Remember, you must show that your study is feasible and that you are knowledgeable enough to actually conduct this research. So, and then identified qualitative content analysis of the interview data. So the interviews are recorded, transcribed into text, and then the contents of that text is what is analyzed, so it becomes qualitative content analysis. And that's it for this example. Now, remember also, you are not writing in this kind of shorthand. This is like a note taking. You can start with this type of short notes as a planning for your portfolio. But when you write full sentences and paragraphs. I don't have time to show you that example. Maybe next week we'll have time. But just a reminder to not fall into the trap to hand in a portfolio with this kind of shorthand. You must discuss qualitative content analysis and use sources. You must discuss write a sentence or two about the software that will be used. Write a paragraph or two about your interview schedules and how they will be compiled. So don't take the shorthand as an example of how you should write. Okay, that's it from me. Sorry, we are running long again. Maybe we should start scheduling these for 45 minutes, Prof. It seems like I can't keep within the 30 minutes. All right. Was there any questions or things while I was chattering away?
Nothing as far as I could see. There's nothing, yes.
Okay, and I see, Maury, you haven't received yours, but you sent a mail. If it's in my mailbox, I will attend to that. So don't be too concerned. All right, and what you can also do, we don't have time for too many questions and comments anyway today, but please send me via email if something was unclear or if something confused you today, or if you think we should do it differently for the other examples. Tell us. I would like to help prep you for this exam portfolio in a way that is working best for you. So if this didn't work, we can change our minds and do something else with the other two sessions. That my plan was to also discuss examples like this. Okay, somebody is typing, so let's just see. But after that question, let's see what you say. The examples, this document we discussed now is already on my UNISA under the exam portfolios, support and additional resources little tab. Let me show you on the screen. There is this year's. So under that tab, portfolio support materials, there's the document. It's the first one I uploaded, so you can go and check it there. It's the same one I posted in the chat. So yes, it is on my UNISA, and we'll keep adding to my UNISA as these sessions go along so that you have access to everything we talked about during the build up to the exam. I will also put the recording. Remember, you can access the recording via the same link you used to attend the session, but I will also put it on the YouTube channel for those who watch easier on YouTube. That's all from me. Prof, anything from your side?
Nothing from my side, except to say thank you to you and your dedication. And as you can see, if I can tell the students, you can see she really wants you to do well. So thank you very much. Your dedication and the way you approach this, I think, from my side, I appreciate it, and I think the students as well. Thank you.
Let's hope it works for everyone. But my intention is really to help you in all the ways possible. The exam portfolio is a lot easier in terms of complex thinking than, for example, assignment 1. So I'm hoping that the difficult assignments will help you to just fly through this exam portfolio. But all right, we'll see each other again next week. All the best until then, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.